And then we do have a quorum present, Mr. Chair, so we can start right on time at 9:07.
All right, 9:07.
And then Eric, it is kind of low for us here to hear you compared to everybody else that's been speaking, but I'll raise it on our end. I'm not
Okay.
sure if it's just us or if anyone else is having a hard time hearing you.
My headset, I don't. Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the October 8th, 2020 meeting of the TPA's Bicycle-Trailways-Pedestrian Advisory Committee. Pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order number 20-69, TPA Operating Procedures Section 6.2, and TPA Emergency Order number 2020-04, Palm Beach TPA is conducting this meeting virtually using the Zoom webinar platform. The TPA selected this platform because it does not require the public to purchase or download any additional software or equipment to attend this meeting. Aside from the Zoom webinar platform that the participants will use to attend remotely, the public will have no discernible difference in their ability to watch the meeting from that of someone physically attending the meeting. Instruction to join this virtual meeting, as well as contact information for a TPA staff member to assist you are provided in the published meeting agenda. Please note that although some members of the BTPAC are attending the meeting in person, committee members will be appearing at today's meeting remotely, either via webcam or telephone. Additionally, scheduled presenters in the BTPAC liaison will also be appearing via webcam or telephone. Before we begin, I will summarize our public comments procedures for this virtual meeting. Written documents, comments, and questions can be submitted online at the website provided in the agenda. Verbal comments can also be made live through the Zoom webinar platform. When you wish to be recognized, please use the raise hand function within the Zoom platform and then wait to be recognized by the chair and unmuted by the meeting host. Lastly, an in-person visitor may submit a comment card available at the welcome table. Roll call. Staff, please call the roll so we can establish a quorum.
Holly Shannon. Here. Eric Ferguson.
Here.
Ted Goodenough.
Here.
Michael Howe.
Here.
Jean Matthews. Here. Yash Nagal.
Here.
Fadi Nassar.
Here.
Michael Owens.
Here.
Craig Pinder.
Here.
Olga Bertha. And actually, I believe we're having Ryan Hardy join us, but he didn't know he'd be a little bit late. John Roach. John, I don't think I didn't hear it verbally.
Here.
Thank you. Brian Rushner.
Here.
Bob Saban.
Here.
Joanne Scaria is excused. Stephanie Dover.
Here.
Larry Wallace.
Morning. Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Item B, modifications to the agenda. Are there any requested modifications to the agenda? Not, seeing none, we'll move on. Motion to approve minutes for September 3rd, 2020. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, can I have a motion to adopt the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Raised hands, or no raised hands. So motion by John.
I'll second.
Second by Michael. Any discussion? And Margie, no raised hands, right?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Item D, general public comments and public comments on agenda items.
Yes, Mr. Chair. This is Melissa Booth, Public Relations Manager for the TPA, and I'm very pleased that today we actually have two different public comments on separate topics. And my apologies to the first gentleman. I'll do the best I can with his last name. He is from North B Street in Lake Worth Beach, and his name is Matthew Van Vorenthuysen, or something remotely close to that. My apologies. And his comment is, "Good morning. I and many others commute daily by bicycle along 10th Avenue North between I-95 and Congress Avenue. The bicycle and pedestrian facilities are horribly substandard along this route, and many drivers zoom through here recklessly at high speed. According to my research," and he provides the link to Palm Beach County's GeoNav website, "the paved portion of this stretch of 10th Avenue North is a minimum of 62 feet across, and that space is devoted nearly entirely to cars. I would like to reallocate the space as follows. 5 foot by 2 equals 10 feet for bicycle lanes, 10 feet by 2 equals 20 feet for outer car lanes, 10 feet by 2 equals 20 feet for inner car lanes, 12 feet by 1 equals 12 feet for the center left turn lane. Meanwhile, the stretch of 10th Avenue North between I-95 and US 1 allows 12 feet per car lane. Drivers along this stretch are even worse than those west of I-95. This space could also be reallocated to allow for a 5-foot bicycle lane in each direction and still allow 9.5 feet per car lane. For context, please consider the stretch of Forest Hill Boulevard between I-95 and US 1. This 5-lane roadway is only 45 feet across, 9 feet per lane. Even with the heavier traffic this roadway gets, drivers here are much more cautious and considerate toward each other and other road users than they are on 10th Avenue North. The best explanation for this difference is that Forest Hill Boulevard has narrower lanes. My proposal would really help a lot of people. For some of us, it may even be a matter of life and death. Please consider it carefully." And I'd like to note that the TPA staff has already provided these comments to Palm Beach County for their consideration when they plan the next resurfacing project, which I believe is scheduled within a few years. And then our second general public comment, and both of these came in through our online comment form that's available prior to the meeting when the agendas are posted, and then through the meeting up until the time of each agenda item. I'd just like to comment and hopefully encourage more future comments. This next comment is from Kevin Cairo of Lago Drive in Boynton Beach. Has the TPA analyzed the use of canal rights-of-way to build greenways, given Palm Beach County has over 300 miles of canals under public management? Since canals subdivide our large residential superblocks, they could provide uniquely useful routes compared to road-adjacent paths. Separation from vehicles reduces conflicts that lead to accidents, even compared to protected lanes. Air quality would be drastically better than on the road shoulder or sidewalk. The practicality and comfort could be a boon to ridership. What challenges do canal greenways face? What would be the best way to get some priority behind them and include them in the planning process? And that ends the public comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Item E, comments from the chair and member comments. I don't have any comments, if any. Well, I do have one comment. Just the ad hoc committee continues to meet. We're going to meet again. I think we made some good progress. So that's still ongoing, and I'm looking forward to, I think the whole ad hoc committee is looking forward to coming back to you soon. If any other committee members have a comment, please utilize the raise hand function. Margie, any raise hands? I think you're muted. Nope. Okay, seeing no comments, move on to item F, BTPAC liaisons report. Alyssa will provide the report.
Hi, good morning, everyone. It's so great to see everyone again. So before I dive into this, I do want to briefly announce something super exciting. The TPA has actually been awarded a bicycle-friendly business designation and silver status, which meets one of our strategic plan goals. So some very exciting news for us, and this is a certification designation that lasts 4 years. So very exciting. And as for the rest of the liaisons report, I'll dive right in. So the TPA is doing a committee census where we are requesting all committee members to complete a census on race, sex, and age to assist the TPA in tracking committee diversity in accordance with state statute. This survey can be viewed at our website at /TPA committee census. October is National Pedestrian Safety Month. National Pedestrian Safety Month aims to focus efforts on raising awareness year-round efforts to reduce deaths, educate road users, and remind us that everyone is a pedestrian. More information is available on their website at nhtsa.gov/events. FDOT is having a Transplex web series, which is going to be a series of webinars that will occur every Friday morning during the month of October. More information is available on their website. Mobility Week is occurring in 2020 this year for the week of October 30th to November 6th. This is something that FDOT does to promote a statewide celebration of making smart, efficient, and safe transportation choices. Additional information is available on their website at fdot.gov/projects/mobility week. The TPA is hosting an FHWA lane repurposing workshop that is going to be web-based on Friday, November 6th. Seating is limited and registration is going to close on November 2nd, so make sure you register before that closes.
Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
I'm still going, sorry.
Oh, you're still going? I'm sorry.
Just take a second. There was a little delay.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So Florida Public Opinion Survey for Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety. This is an ongoing survey right now that is being done through FDOT, and it is to acknowledge people's knowledge on pedestrian and bicycle safety and knowledge on traffic laws related to pedestrians and bicycles. It's a really great survey and has some really good information. It definitely recommends that everyone participates in it. America Walks Community Challenge Grant. The application for this grant for the 2020 Community Challenge Grant Program. The application period is open and applications are due November 9th, 2020. Grantees will be awarded $1,500 in community stipends for projects related to creating healthy, active, and engaged places to live, work, and play. Safe Routes to School opens their call for funding program. The applications are open from September 1st to December 31st of 2020. More information is available on their website at srtfl.org. FDOT has funds available for high visibility enforcement right now for pedestrian and bicycle safety. These funds are available for law enforcement agencies to conduct HVE operations to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. The October TPA board meeting will be held on October 15th at 9 a.m. Final notice of the meeting location will be made available with the distribution of the board agenda a week prior to the meeting. And the agenda packet and meeting details will be available on our website. And I think there's one more slide. Yeah. November meetings. So as a reminder, there are going to be no meetings, advisory or governing board in November. The next TAC meeting will be December 3rd, and the next BTPAC meeting will be December 3rd. And TAC will be December 2nd. I'm sorry. The BTPAC 2021 meeting time. So just so everyone is aware, the TPA is going to be adjusting the BTPAC meeting time to 9 a.m. starting in 2021 to be consistent with our governing board and our technical advisory meeting times. So our December meeting will be 9:07, but once we hit January, we will go to 9 o'clock starting time. Save the date for our Safe Street Summit, which will be held virtually on January 28th and 29th. And more information is available on the Safe Street Summit website. Now I'm done.
Now you're done. Okay. Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Mr. Chair, but I do have that Stephanie has her hand raised.
Okay.
Question,
Stephanie.
thank you, Chair. Alyssa, question, the lane repurpose workshop, what is the purpose of that? Is it location specific, or is it education for the public, or what?
So the lane repurposing workshop is just going to be a general overview of lane repurposing projects, how to do them, where to do them. It's not for a specific location, it's just in general.
Okay, in general. Can you, one other thing, can you send us your update in a follow-up email, your liaison update, so I can have all those
Sure. I'll
information?
send that after the meeting today.
Thank you.
Any other raised hands, Margie?
No, Mr. Chair.
No. Okay. No other comments. I'm going to move on to item 2A. Motion to recommend approval of the Transportation Alternatives TA Program Guidelines and Scoring System. Alyssa will present this item.
Okay, so let's dive into this year's proposed scoring and TPA recommended scoring for the fiscal year 21 Transportation Alternatives Program. We will go over the guidelines and the scoring. Okay, there we go. So an overview of the Transportation Alternatives Program. This funding program funds on and off-road pedestrian and bicycle facilities and safe routes to school projects. Funding this year is $3.1 million, and the maximum per project, or maximum the project can receive, is $1 million. The minimum project can receive is $250,000. And this program funds sidewalks, bicycle facilities, pedestrian bicycle signals, lighting, safety amenities, stuff like this. And just so a reminder, the application submittal due date this year is going to be February 26th of 2021. And the funds will be available 3 years out, so 2024 is the timeline on the screen. So the schedule that we're looking at for this year includes a program kickoff next week, October 15th, 2020, after our governing board approves the programs, followed by an application workshop on October 27th, 2020. This will be hosted by us and will be a hybrid one. And information on this is available on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/funding. We will be again requiring pre-application workshops, and these are not workshops, I'm sorry, meetings. These meetings can be scheduled between November and January. The application deadline for this funding cycle is going to be February 26th, 2021. And again, information is going to be or is available currently on our website at palmbeachtpa.org/TA. Our draft priority project list is going to go to committees and our board in July of 2021. And our final project priorities go to FDOT on July 28th, 2021. So I'm going to dive a little deeper, section by section, into our TPA recommended scoring for this upcoming year. I'm just going to go through the changes. However, if it's easier for me to just read through all of it, I can do that as well. And so just quickly before diving into that, I do want to review some of our non-motorized facilities that we do look at in transportation alternatives. And the scores that we are proposing are underneath each type of facility. So we are showing that we are going to be scoring facilities that are to offer that highest degree of safety, the most points. So shared use paths, separated bicycle facilities, and two-way cycle tracks. And raised bicycle lanes are all going to be awarded the maximum amount of points for that type of, for the type of facility that it is, followed by pathways, and then buffered bicycle lanes, sidewalks, awarding 2 points only to designated bicycle lanes and unpaved paths, and then We will not be giving any points to undesignated bicycle lanes, sharrows, or unpaved trails. And again, I will dive into this a little further in a second. So the way that we decided to organize the scoring this year is in the past, it was reflecting our long-range transportation plans, goals, and objectives. This year we were looking at it and we decided that it might be best to break it up. So we look at what the project is that's being proposed, where it's being proposed, and why is it being proposed, and provide points based off of that breakdown. So that's what we're looking at now. So first, we're going to look at the category what. So projects that could be applied for, bicycle facilities and pedestrian facilities. So on the screen, we are showing our track changes. The old changes that we are canceling out do have a line through it, and the new proposed score is underlined. So for bicycle facility type, you see that separated bicycle or separated or raised bicycle lanes and 10-foot shared use paths are both brought up to 5 points from previously being awarded 4 points in the past. This is again just because they do offer the highest degree of safety for the users of the facility. Then we are proposing 4 points for an 8 to 9 foot paved path for pedestrian facilities, as that is that offers more space and more comfort than a 4 to 7 foot sidewalk. But it's not quite where a shared use path is. So for sidewalk, we did have that previously at 2 points, which is the same as a 4 foot unpaved path. However, we did raise that a point just because a sidewalk does offer more comfort and more safety than an unpaved path. It is also ADA compliant, whereas an unpaved facility isn't necessarily. So for that reason, we are giving it up an extra point. And if you look in the maximum column, you see that we are raising it to 10 points. So previously it was 8 and 7. We wanted to make it easier for both staff and our committee members to look at this and just do the math to figure out the scoring of a project on the spot during our workshop versus having to do all that math, and have that extra second of that. And we also did add a standalone item for standalone ADA facilities, and this is something that we incorporated based off comments from past applications and past grant cycles. So for this item, this is something that we are going to be awarding 0.2 points per location. So if an application is applying for 50 pedestrian crossings at intersections, that would end up being 10 points maximum. So if you have a 10-foot shared use path and you also have 50 pedestrian crossings on one application, you're still going to be maxed out at 10 points. So now we're going to dive into the where topic. When you look at this, you see that, so for Vision Zero Action Plan, we had it previously 10 points awarded to each of the 3 categories. So project improves pedestrian facilities, bicycle facilities, and improves lighting and dark unlit crash corridors. So you could hypothetically have a project meeting all 3 of those categories, but you'd still be maxed out at 20 points. Now we dropped all of those points down to 5 points, and you can be awarded points for each of those 3 categories. So you would still benefit from each of those being awarded 15 points rather than being limited. For the long-range transportation plan elements right underneath that, project improves pedestrian facilities in Tier 1 pedestrian gap, and project improves bicycle facilities in a Tier 1 bicycle corridor. Those were both previously awarded 5 points, but they were not grouped together, so we grouped it together for clarity. And then the last edit you'll see on this page is that project improves facilities at an interchange, bridge, railroad crossing, or signalized intersection was previously 6 points, and we dropped that to 5 to maintain 100 points as our maximum and keep the numbers easy for, like I said, staff and our members to be able to do the math on the spot. And then under the why category, we did not have any changes, but just to touch on this category, is really asking, why are we doing this project? Does the project have positive environmental impacts? Has it been tested as a pilot project? Is it endorsed by members of the community, etc.? And so as a reminder, our Transportation Alternatives and Local Initiatives Application Workshop will be held on October 27th as a hybrid meeting, so in person at our office and over Zoom, and it will happen from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And the recording will be provided on our website after the meeting. And this is an action item and does require the approval of this for the program to. That is my presentation.
Staff, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Mr. Chair.
Is there any questions on the presentation for all staff? They have hands raised. Patty's got his hand physically raised. All right, Patty.
Could you hear me?
I can.
Okay, good. Just want to make first a comment. I know when Alyssa was speaking, there was some kind of echo. I'm not sure if it's only me who heard that or it was for most of us. Probably only me. Okay. Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The first one is when we have a score per mile, is it per direction or is it for both directions?
So it's both directions when it's per mile. So if you're applying for a project and let's say it's a pedestrian facility or bicycle facility and it is maxed out at 5 points, you are able to get 10 points because if the project is being applied for more than or 2 miles or more, then it's multiplied by 2. So you would be able to get that is for both directions, not for one direction.
So if it's 1 mile and you have both direction, would it be considered as 1 mile or as 2 miles?
That would be considered as 1 mile.
1 mile, okay.
Yeah.
The other question is, I know you have 10 points for environmental. I mean, it's a lot of points. Could you clarify what is the criteria for that? It's one of your slides.
Sure. Let's bring that slide back up. Greg, can you please bring that slide back up? We're working on it. Sorry, Ruben. Okay, Claudia, your question was what?
I think go to the following page.
Next slide. Okay.
Yeah, on the top.
So the item, the line is just project has positive environmental impact, including mitigation activity, pollution prevention and abatement, stormwater management, tree canopy coverage, and pervious material.
I mean, is it going to be either 0 or 10, or how would you evaluate what value to give to this project?
It would just be 0 or 10 points. If the project has environmental elements, it will be 10 points. If it does not have environmental elements, it will be 0 points. Having points in the middle does create some subjectivity to it.
Okay, thank you. That's my question.
So Eric, I have Sally followed by John.
Okay, and I see and Michael has his hand physically raised.
Oh.
I noticed that more. So he said Sally was first. Okay, Sally.
Okay, I have Sally or Mike.
Hard to hear you, Sally.
And then just bring it closer. Good.
I had a question too on environmental impact. So it is a lot of points from either or. And I just want to clarify, if you have a project that's up on a canal bank, so that would be dirt, and you put pervious pavement on top of that, you get the 10 points.
Yes, sorry.
And then the other thing, the 3 things under the Y, is tested as a pilot with local funds, endorsed by members. So they're basically 3 ways that can contribute, but only 10 points total. So if somebody had a project that had been done as a pilot, but it had no support, they would potentially get the 10 points.
Yeah, so in the categories where it's grouped like that, where it could be, let's say there's 3 categories and there's 5 points each, but it's grouped at 10, even if you're only meeting 2 of those categories and you're not meeting all 3, even if you are meeting all 3, you'll still have 10 points. So if you have 5, or if you're only meeting 1 of those, that's when you have 5 points only. Does that make sense? Okay.
So then I have John followed by Michael Powell.
Okay, John.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so Alyssa, I know you provided in our one-on-one, you did the strike through underline, the track changes. If maybe in the future, when we're proposing changes like this to an existing system, if the track changes can be included in our packet, I think that would be helpful. Because I think in what we received with the agenda was just the proposed, so it was hard to see in there. So I was trying to remember back to our one-on-one and what we had discussed. And since I'm relatively new to the group, but it's just kind of a general comment or question to the rest of the board members is, with this type of scoring system, do we feel like we're getting the best projects, that we can and that we want, or the types of projects that we want? It seems like it seems very regimented, and that is good, and that it does take some of the subjectivity out of it. But I also feel like that, some of these projects and the context in which they sit and so forth, some subjectivity would be beneficial, especially when kind of in light of the public comment that was put out before about, putting trailways adjacent to canals and so forth. It seems like this scoring system really discredits those types of projects, but puts a lot of favoritism towards the urbanized projects, which is good as well. But I'm wondering if we're missing out on opportunities for good projects to be scored highly, given the scoring system that's proposed. So that's just kind of my general comment. Again, relatively new, so I haven't gone through the process of scoring projects using this. I'll be interested how it plays out.
Sure. So I do want to quickly just mention that again, our scoring does reflect, the title of the program, which is transportation alternatives. So, there is funding. We can fund projects that are not in the urbanized area, but the funding is specifically, it's supposed to be used for, the urbanized area transportation alternatives project. So I did just want to, touch on that. That is why the scoring is kind of designed the way that it is, in regards to really highlighting on off-road facilities, but providing more points to those that do impact people who do live in the urbanized area and people who.
But I feel like that there could be a canal project really close by to a major roadway, and that it would actually be safer to have the canal project than to have a bike lane on the roadway, or separate a bike lane on the urbanized road. So Palm Beach County is unique, and then we have a lot of those different types of opportunities so to try and, put them into a binary scoring system is a little difficult, when you got two completely different things that you could be evaluating. So.
Okay, Michael or John, are you any other comments or?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Okay. It's my understanding that there was some discussion on changing language at yesterday's TAC meeting, the Technical Advisory Committee. I don't think it's our role to, vote up or down on their suggestions, but I think just from an information standpoint, if somebody could summarize the revisions that they were proposing, it would just be good information for us.
So, the Technical Advisory Committee actually reviews the local initiative scoring, which is a different funding program than we review. We review the transportation alternatives funding. So there are certain elements of our scoring that are reflected in the local initiative scoring, but it's not entirely the same scoring system. There are different elements. It really is only that first what category that is similar. But again, their comments don't necessarily reflect on, the scoring system that we're reviewing because it's a different scoring or funding program.
Okay. I wasn't sure about that, but thank you for the clarification.
And then Eric, I have Brian with his hand raised.
Okay, Brian.
This is Brian. Just for clarification too, I think I saw Ted's hand go up as well. I'm not sure if he still wanted to speak, but I think I saw that go up. But we are also looking at this question specifically from, perspective of projects that would not necessarily be in a urban setting. Canals on Trails, I think, kind of falls into that discussion with the ad hoc scoring committee for this in particular. We didn't feel right to make a recommendation at this point, but that was part of our discussions as well. I hear absolutely what you're saying. We have so many missed opportunities with canal projects in particular. In Delray, we're requiring easements or just flat out construction on canalways. We've had some roadblocks with the amount of right of way that's required to be dedicated to the Lake Worth Drainage District, and we've really had to push on our development community to give us, the city, the space to own and maintain a trail and the Lake Worth Drainage District for their needs. So there are some other means to go about doing it, but it's definitely going to take a little bit longer, and we just didn't have the recommendation from the ad hoc committee. And I don't want to speak for the rest of the group, but I think that's something that we're looking at pretty closely.
Okay.
And then Eric, Brian did note, which I missed, my apologies to Ted, that he had his hand raised.
Okay, Ted.
Actually, I was just waving to my wife.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right.
And I don't see any other hands raised, but I'm going to just take a beat just to double check.
Okay.
Yeah, we should be good.
No other raised hands?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And for my recollection, does the committee have the ability to score? I may be incorrect. Correct me if I'm wrong. Do we have the ability to score differently than the formulas? Is that true when we do our scoring? Do we have the ability to do a different recommendation than the scoring sheet that goes to the governing board? Is that true? Or?
Yeah, so we do need to, come up with a recommendation for the governing board today. But we do have the ability to, play around with the scoring a little bit.
No, I guess that wasn't my question. It wasn't changing the recommendation today for the scoring. In the past, have we ever say the scoring, when we meet as a committee and score the projects, do we have the ability to give a different recommendation than the formulas? Yeah. Okay, we do. Yeah, that's what I thought. Because John's new, I didn't know if he was aware of that. So
yeah, so you do have the ability to go in and to re-rank the projects before sending them to the list or the list to the board. Yes, you do have that. And like you guys prioritize the TA, the transportation alternative projects.
Right. Just wanted to confirm that. Yeah, and usually it's worked out that they've been, I think they work out pretty close. I think in the past, the sort of binary scoring to what a lot of us think. I think it's been close. I mean, there's been a few that, don't always make it, but it's been pretty close. It being there's no other discussion, is there a motion to approve the recommended guidelines and scoring system?
Hi, Jean Matthews. I make a recommendation to approve the scoring guidelines modifications with a caveat that the BTPAC committee will continue to rank and prioritize the projects, and that those rankings will go to the TPA board.
Could everyone hear that? I had a hard time.
It wasn't really clear.
Yeah.
Motion.
Can you repeat it, Jean?
Oh, okay, let me say it again. I make a move to adopt the modification to scoring guidelines with the caveat that the BTPAC committee will continue to rank and prioritize the projects, and that the BTPAC's recommendations will go to the governing board.
I heard that time. Is there a second?
Brian, second.
Okay. So we have a first and a second.
And this does require a roll call vote, Mr. Chair.
Okay. We'll open the floor for discussion on the motion. Any raised hands on the motion?
Yeah, I got a question. I guess I'm really not up to date with this ad hoc committee, but that Jean was referring to, I think. And I guess I'd like to understand that a little more. Can you tell us a little more about where the ad hoc committee is going?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. I'm not asking for the ad hoc committee to be able to rank. I'm asking for this committee to be able to rank. And this committee's recommendations go to the TPA governing board. The ad hoc is a separate committee.
Yeah, obviously.
And Chair, I just want to clarify the motion for, before we take our vote. I don't know if you want me to do that now or allow more discussion. I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, do you want to?
Okay, so the motion that Jean made, and I confirmed with staff that this does not deviate from the guidelines that were provided in the packet. The BTPAC does have the opportunity to re-rank and prioritize, and that does go to the board after you make that motion. So the motion on the floor, to my understanding, would be to approve as presented.
Yes, approved as presented, but I would like the motion to include that the rankings continue to go to the governing board.
Right, so what's presented is that hasn't changed. It's still in the guidelines that we presented to you, that you will have the opportunity to re-rank and prioritize and send that information to the board.
I would actually like it to be part of
the motion. Okay, even if it's a redundancy.
Yes, please.
Okay. But to be clear, for those voting, this is not changing from what staff has provided. It is just a redundant statement. So when you're ready, Eric, let me know and I'll call the roll.
Okay.
I can also jump in very quickly to just kind of give an overview of the ad hoc to Bob and those who were not part of it. The ad hoc committee is something that was discussed, and we initially determined to have this meeting in September. I think it was a result of the September 2019 BTPAC committee meeting, where we discussed having a smaller committee to go and look into the terminology for greenways and scoring and or how rural facilities are scored. And so we've had two committee meetings or ad hoc committee meetings to discuss findings, and we are going to have a third meeting to discuss future changes in next year's scoring, but there's not going to be any changes for it this year. We just didn't have sufficient time. But I was directed to do some research on the definitions of greenways and how other large peer MPOs in the state of Florida are looking at scoring for these rural facilities. And those were really just the findings that were presented at that. But it's just a committee member or a committee of 5 or so committee members that are just to discuss potential changes.
Eric, I have Jean as a comment.
Oh, and I was going to look at reapplying for the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, FERDAP, and they have a trails ranking. I was going to look at their scoring and also the Office of Greenways and Trails in their score.
It's hard to hear you. Or staff, you having a hard time hearing Jean also?
Okay. Hi, Jean Matthews.
Much better.
Look at Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, FERDAP grant funding, because they have a trails component. And also to look at the Office of Greenways and Trails, their Recreation Trails grant, and how they score projects to get some ideas.
Okay. Any other raised hands, Margie?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I have a motion by Jean Matthews and a second by Brian Ruscher. Because we're conducting this meeting virtually, we are going to do this vote by roll call. Margie, please call the roll.
Sally Shannon. Aye. Eric Ferguson.
Aye.
Ted Goodenough.
Aye.
Michael Howell.
Aye.
Jean Matthews.
Aye.
Josh Nagal.
Aye.
Fadi Nassar. Oh, Fadi, you're muted.
Aye.
Michael Owens.
Aye.
Craig Pinder.
Aye.
Ryan Hardy. I believe I saw Ryan. Oh, I'm sorry, Ryan. I'm assuming maybe you called in. Do you have a 561 number, Ryan?
Aye.
Thank you. John Roach,
Aye.
Brian Ruscher,
Aye.
Bob Saban,
Aye.
Joanna's absent, Stephanie Thilber. It passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Right. Items 3A, I-95 at Woolbright Road, project development and environmental study. And I think you mentioned the DOT presenters changed. Who's going to present from DOT?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it will be Juliana. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure she's. I'm sorry. I'll
Morning.
comment as well before you start presenting.
I just want to jump in quickly.
I'm sorry, public comments. You get, yeah.
I just want to jump in quickly and restate the motion from the last one. So it was to approve the scoring, but you wanted it to say what exactly?
The motion was to approve the modification to the scoring sheet as presented, with the caveat that the Bicycle-Trailways-Pedestrian Advisory Committee, the BTPAC, rank the projects independently, and that their rankings be presented to the governing board.
Okay. Okay. So yes, I do just want to remind everyone that that isn't any different than, I just want everyone to be aware that that isn't any different from what is already had.
Yes, I realize it's a redundancy.
Oh, okay.
Okay, going back, items 3A, I-95 at Woolbright Road, project development and environmental study. Juliet, so your name's cut off.
Hi, good morning. This is Julieta Manso.
Okay, and before you present, staff, are there any public comments on this item?
Mr. Chair, we normally take public comment after the presentation, but I don't have any hands raised at this time.
Oh, you're right. Yep, I looked at it too quickly. So, okay.
All righty, so good morning. As I mentioned, my name is Julieta Manso. I'm with Hanson Professional Services, and I'll be presenting the I-95 at Woodbury Road PD&E Study Project. With me today, we have on the line Humberto Arrieta. He's the FDOT project manager, and also Jeff Easley. He's the consultant project manager for the project. Let me make sure. Margie, did you give me control? Oh, there you go. All right. So the interchange of I-95 at Woodbury Road is located within the city of Boynton Beach in Palm Beach County. The project limits extend along I-95 from just south to just north of Woodbury Road, and along Woodbury Road from Southwest 18th Street on the west to Southwest 2nd Street on the east. I-95 is a 10-lane divided interstate within the project limits, and Woodbury Road is a 6-lane divided west of I-95 and 5 lanes with a 2-way left turn lane east of I-95. We also have the South Florida Rail Corridor, CSX, that runs parallel to I-95 on the west side of I-95. And there was also a design build project that was completed in 2019 that widened Woodbury Road over I-95 to provide 1 additional left turn lane to go into I-95 northbound and southbound. The purpose of the study is to address traffic spillback onto I-95, reduce congestion on I-95 and Woodbury Road within the interchange, improve interchange operations, and improve safety through the 2045 design year. And the need for the project was established based on system linkage, capacity, transportation demand, modal interrelationship, and safety. An existing crash analysis was conducted as part of this study. We looked at the last 5-year crash history for the I-95 mainline, the I-95 ramps, and Woodbury Road within the project limits. Based on the results from the crash data, we determined that most of the crashes are associated with the heavy congestion along these 3 segments, being rear end collisions the most predominant crash type along this project. On this slide, we show the existing year traffic conditions. On the boxes on the top, we show the lane configuration at each of the intersections that we evaluated, which includes Southwest 8th Street intersection, the southbound terminal ramp intersection, and the northbound terminal ramp intersections with I-95. On the aerial, we show at all the intersections, the level of service and delayed. The top box, which in this case are green for all of them, is the AM values, and at the bottom box, it's the PM value, which in this case, they're all yellow. The level of service at the 3 intersections during the AM is level of service C, and during the PM, it's level of service D. Based on the no action or no build analysis for the 2045 year condition, the traffic projections at these 3 intersections will deteriorate by the year 2045, with levels of service F and E at the Southwest 8th Street intersection and levels of service D and E at the ramp terminal intersections. So as part of this project, we did an alternatives analysis evaluation, and we evaluated the no build alternative, and we also developed 3 build alternatives. As part of the alternatives that we developed, we had alternative 1, which included maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange configuration. We also evaluated as alternative 2, a diverging diamond interchange. And we also had as alternative 3, a single point urban interchange. We presented all of these alternatives at an alternatives public workshop, which we conducted virtually in July 22nd. We also had a virtual open house with all the materials for the public to review before the alternative workshop, and it's actually still available on the website. Based on the evaluation of the 3 alternatives, we selected a preferred alternative for the project, which is alternative 1 that consists on maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange configuration. So on the screen here, we show what the preferred alternative looks like. I know it's a little hard to see, but we have another concept that we can zoom in if we can look into more detail some of the improvements. But I'm just gonna go over some of the key features for this alternative. So with this alternative, we're widening Woolbright Road over I-95 to provide one additional through lane in each direction. We're also widening the bridge over I-95 and the bridge over South Florida Rail Corridor to provide for that additional lane. We're widening the northbound and the southbound off ramps to provide one additional left turn lane, making those triple left. The existing configuration now has 2 lanes at the northbound and the southbound exit ramps. We're also making improvements at the 8th Street intersection. We're adding 1 additional westbound through lane. We're adding 1 additional left turn lane at the eastbound and westbound directions to provide dual left turn lanes. Now there's only 1 left turn lane at the intersection. So all of these improvements for the 8th Street intersection will require widening at the E4 Canal Bridge, which is right west of the intersection. We're also extending the bicycle lanes that right now end at the I-95 after the bridge. We're extending the bicycle lanes west to Southwest 18th Street. I know this is a little hard to see because it's very small, but we can go over some of the details after we cover the PowerPoint. In this slide, we show the widening of both bridges over I-95 and South Florida Rail Corridor. The previous widening that was done as part of the design build project widened the bridges on the north side. So as part of our bridge analysis, we determined that the existing structures are in good condition, so we can actually widen the bridge now on the south side, kind of mirroring what the improvements were done previously. You can see the improvements are shown on the right side of your screen. And then for this slide, we show the improvements on the E4 Canal widening. So because of the improvements of Southwest 8th Street intersection, we need to widen the bridge to accommodate for that extra lane that goes westbound on Woolbright Road and also extending the bicycle lane. There is an existing pedestrian bridge that goes on the north side of the canal. As part of the widening, we will include sidewalk on the new bridge, on the new portion of the widening of the bridge to accommodate for that sidewalk replacement. The traffic analysis 2045 for the preferred alternative is shown on this slide. As you can see, the proposed improvements will improve the operations at all 3 intersections, bringing the level of service at Southwest 8th Street intersection to E in the AM and D on the PM, and level of service C on the AM and PM at the southbound ramp terminal intersections, and level of service C and D for the northbound ramp terminal intersection. This picture shows the right-of-way impacts associated with the preferred alternative and are required to accommodate the improvements at the Southwest 8th Street intersection. Right-of-way impacts are anticipated at the southwest quadrant of the intersection, which will include approximately 2,000 square feet of right-of-way. There's no buildings or any impacts to any parking spaces as part of these right-of-way impacts. As I just mentioned, only 1 business property is being impacted just for the improvements at the 8th Street. There's no relocations associated with the right-of-way. For the cost estimate, we have an estimated construction cost of $12 million, right-of-way acquisition $1.5 million, for an estimated cost of $17 million for this project. We started this project at the end of 2018. We've had an alternative public workshop. We have a public kickoff meeting that was conducted back in May 2018. We've met with the city of Boynton Beach, and we've also coordinated and met with the TPA before we presented our alternatives at our alternatives workshop. When we started this project, we anticipated that the class of action for the PD&E was the categorical exclusion type 2. Now, after the alternative workshop, and as we already selected a preferred alternative, and given that we are maximizing the existing tight diamond interchange and we don't have any major improvements that will create major impacts with this project, the project has been reclassified as a categorical exclusion type 1. So what this means is the project's still moving forward and will advance to the design phase, but we're not required to have a public hearing for the PD&E study, which will help us to complete the project quicker so it can move to the design phase. So we're here today to give an update on the project. Since we're not having a public hearing, we'll be preparing a newsletter that will be mailed out to the community to let them know the project is moving on to the design phase, and the design is scheduled to begin early next year. So with that, I would like to open the floor for any questions, and we can also have on display the concept in case there's any questions related to the concept.
Okay, Margie, are there any public comments on the item?
I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback, so I'm gonna mute somebody. Okay, so I do have a public comment. I have Kevin Carlo that has a public comment. So I will allow him to speak. And you'll need to unmute on your end. You will be allotted 3 minutes for your public comment.
Hi, yeah, my name is Kevin Cairo. My question, I guess I live in Boynton Beach, 9680 Lago Drive, 33472. I don't know if I need to give my address, but I thought I read that. I did, so I will. My question is regards to the extension of the bike lane. In particular, I am curious, like, if there are cost estimates for like how much that adds to the project. And in particular, I'm curious if, you know, that those funds are somehow could be thought of as like taking away from other opportunities, because it seems that, you know, in my mind, any money that goes towards designated bike lanes where there's a sidewalk is something that maybe could be leveraged better in other high impact areas. But since piggybacking on a large project, maybe it's worth doing anyway. But I'm just kind of curious about some of those dynamics. That's all. Thank you.
And then here I do have that Stephanie has her hand raised.
Okay. Stephanie.
Question on the bike lane and whether or not there's adequate space, whether it could be buffered, particularly after the turn lanes, so that it's either combined or looking at a shared path with the sidewalk. You know, there's a high level of traffic there. You feel more comfortable riding your bike if it's either buffered or shared. And I see that the sidewalk has some sort of physical barrier, and then that might make people want to ride their bike more if they feel safer.
Well, let me. This is Jeff Easley, the consultant project manager. The first question or the comment: the bike lane currently is out there. The design build job provided bike lanes from just east of the interchange to just west of the interchange. So there are existing designated bike lanes that are out there today. This project is simply just extending those bike lanes west to 18th, and the cost of that is not really that significant based on what we're doing. So it really doesn't take away from any other improvements that we would do at this location. Plus, if we have the opportunity to extend bike lanes, we're going to do that. Now, as far as the buffered bike lanes, of course, these are comments, you know, we get these comments all the time, and we always look at what are the possibilities for the maximum safety for bicyclists as well as pedestrians. The issue we have with this project is we have 3 bridges. And of course, anytime you have bridge widenings, you know, the costs go up the wider you make the bridges. And if you put in buffers, you got to widen the bridge another 2 feet, another 3 feet. And the thought here was this bridge was widened just recently on the north side, about 30 feet. And the one advantage of this project is we're able to widen the bridges and not replace them. And that was part of the decision-making process that went in to lower the class of action from a CADX 2 to CADX 1, which is pretty significant. And we're widening the bridge as part of this project on the south side about 30 feet. This bridge and also the bridge over I-95 and the bridge over the South Florida Rail Corridor. And the intent, the bridges are in good condition. So it's cost effective to keep the existing bridges, but we want to also maintain the vertical clearance underneath. That's what's important. And the wider you make a bridge, you start losing that vertical clearance. And we can widen the bridge 30 feet. We have determined we can widen it 30 feet and maintain the existing vertical clearance over I-95 as well as the vertical clearance over the railroad. So we're able to provide 5-foot bike lane in each direction, which is there today. We're just making sure that it continues to be there. The lane widths are 12 feet because we need 12 feet lanes because of the triple left turns. Again, the triple left turns require a certain radius to make those turns coming out of the off ramps. So we need that space to accept those left turns. So we feel that what we're recommending, and again, this is going to go to design. So it's the PD&E phase, it goes to design. We've provided the maximum safety that we can for the bike across the bridge. We're extending that over the railroad bridge, and we're extending it over the E4 canal bridge. So we have had that. We have considered the buffer. We just don't feel like we can widen the bridge anymore and provide extra space for a buffered lane. Now, a shared use path, does that replace bike lanes on the road? I mean, that's one of the things that I don't know if that's a requirement. An FDOT standard shared use doesn't replace the bike lanes, but that's something that we had considered and just feel like that's really not what we want to put here along this corridor. But that's a response that how we got to where we are.
This is Humberto Arrieta. I'd like to clarify a bit about the share use path. A share use path cannot substitute a bike lane. We can have them in addition to a bike lane, but we cannot do away with the bike lane and put a share use path instead. That is not our policy. And as you could probably imagine, most cyclists would not get on the share use path. They like to ride on the pavement. It would be nice, but it is not doable. It wouldn't be practical, and it is not part of our policy.
Okay, Margie, is there?
Yes, Chair. I had Craig had his hand raised and he put it down, but now it's up. So I have Craig, followed by John, Stephanie, and then Brian.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Was Steph? Were you finished or?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Just on that comment about the buffered bike lanes. I mean, I don't understand why the through lanes can't be 11 feet and have the triple lefts be at 12 in order to provide that buffered bike lane. But that was just my comment.
Well, the difference is it's not so much the lane width of the turning lanes, it's the distance that's provided between the bike lane and the median, or actually, because we have trucks, that turn there. So you have trucks, you have vehicles, and they make that left turn. There's 3 lanes that have to turn, and that radius is such that they have to have a certain amount of space not to hit the barrier wall. And in order to provide that, we have to have the 12-foot lanes across the bridge. And that's where the typical section, that's why the typical section is provided that way.
So I just want to interject very quickly, and for section 223.2.3 for Florida Design Manual, a shared use path may be substituted for a bicycle lane when certain conditions are met. Is that the case in this project?
Thank you.
I was reading it at the same time. You beat me to it, Alyssa. I think it might be based on the certain context zones, though, I believe. But let's see if DOT staff can answer that.
I'm sorry.
Berto, can you answer that, please?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Per section 223.2.3 of the Florida Design Manual, a shared use path may be substituted for a bicycle lane when certain conditions are met.
Well, I had this conversation in the past with the district design engineer, and I guess there's some wiggle room there, but he made it clear that we would not be doing that. I'm surprised that you would be asking for us to do this, because usually cyclists do not want to use these facilities.
Eric?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say a couple things, but I've got new facilities here and I can't figure out where the raise hand function is on this machine yet. So
okay.
I was going to say, Eric, I have a lot of hands that are raised.
Okay, let's go on. We'll go in the order.
A lot were based on that comment, I think.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was looking at the FDM myself. So the beauty of the internet and working at home. So Margie, I guess Stephanie, do you have further comments? Okay, Margie, let's go in the order you have them raised.
Okay.
We'll get to you, Bob. I think this is going to be a lively discussion.
So I have John.
Okay.
So I was also going to bring up, the opportunity to look at buffered bike lanes. I had noticed the lane width and so forth. I understand the receiving of the left turns may require a wider lane, but I'd really try and emphasize that any opportunity to put in the buffered bike lane, should definitely be done. One other thing with the design, and it looks very similar to a circumstance we have here in West Palm with the exit off of 95 onto Okeechobee Boulevard, is when you have the off-ramp merging onto the cross street, in the case of here, Okeechobee, or in the case of the project you have Woolbright, if it's not a signalized and if traffic is you're relying on traffic to merge or yield to crossing pedestrians or crossing cyclists, more important, in addition, is they're not looking for that cyclist who's coming, for example, if I'm heading north on 95, I'm not necessarily looking for a cyclist in the bike lane coming east on Woolbright. So especially when it's just a yield circumstance and there's a dedicated lane that is, that I'm going into on Woolbright, it really presents a dangerous situation where you're not looking for that traffic to cross you. And, I think it creates a circumstance where cyclists are almost forced to, where they wouldn't normally have to stop, they're almost forced to stop in a circumstance where, the roadway design isn't making them do that. So I don't know if there's an opportunity to do a on-demand signal, or what, where you can accommodate the safety of the cyclists having to cross that traffic coming off the off-ramp.
Well, that's one thing we are considering. That's the thing that they have because right now we have two free flow, the southbound to westbound and the westbound to northbound will be free flow ramps. But we are evaluating possibilities to signalize the right turns on some type of pedestrian activated signal that would be activated if anyone wanted to cross. And that's something that we are considering, and that that will be considered all the way into final design.
Okay. Yeah, and I really want you to take a look at that. Say Okeechobee is kind of a bad example. I've ridden that many times, and you really have to fend for yourself. If you're traveling east on Okeechobee or west on Okeechobee, and you have traffic coming on and off 95. So, I'd really encourage you to look at that.
Okay, noted.
Okay, John, anything else?
No, that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, Margie, who do we have next?
Next I have Craig.
Okay, Craig. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to interrupt for a second. I did look because it might help with the questions. The shared use path policy, the FDM manual 223.2.3 is only applicable. Substituting with the shared use path is only applicable in context zones C1, C2, and C3. And I guess someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the rural context zones. And I would think that maybe the DOT team, they should be using context-based design and would be able to tell us what the context zone is of this project. So I think the thought with the DOT policy is it's for more rural areas to substitute the path. So I guess my question to staff is, to DOT is, do you know what the context zone is of the project?
Yeah, one second.
So also to clarify on top of what Eric said, additional considerations include the design speed being over 35 miles an hour. It's not only the context, although FDOT did just release a new context classification. So it's C3 is suburban also.
Okay.
Suburban.
Yeah, this might be, it's close, yeah.
So Eric, were you waiting for?
Let's keep going.
Okay, so
yeah,
Craig,
they can let us know between speakers.
Okay, good. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to make a comment about the shared use path and cyclists' preference. I believe it depends on the cyclist. There are some cyclists that definitely feel comfortable with riding in a bike lane on a roadway, especially when you're talking about a high-speed roadway like Woolbright Boulevard, which is 40 miles per hour. And we do know the behavior of drivers in this state. They don't stick to the posted speed. So a shared use path, in that case, people tend to prefer to ride along a path that is separated or has more of a safety from traffic. So I just wanted to reiterate that. Also, with the city of Boynton Beach, we are currently working on a mobility plan. And one thing that we would like to see on that corridor west of I-95 is a buffered bike lane. I do know that there is definitely the right-of-way available for it. So if we can really investigate that and really try to push for a buffer bike lane, that would be great. That would be something that we would like to see in the city, because we really do want to encourage people to take a bike if it is a short trip. I also want to reiterate the comments about the safety enhancements for cyclists in regards to the conflicts with traffic along I-95. I live pretty close to my job now, and one reason I don't ride my bike along, I'll say it's Boynton Beach Boulevard, is because of the conflicts with I-95. So if we can do something to really enhance the safety for those conflicts with bicycles and crossing traffic, that merging traffic onto I-95, that would definitely be greatly appreciated. And I think it would really help to elevate this project.
Okay, thank you, Craig. Who's next, Margie?
Brian Lucier.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah. Hi, Brian Rusher. I think I tend to agree with most of the comments and concerns that have been put into place in the past. I really think it would be helpful to have the FDOT design engineer come and talk to us about the different types of users that FDOT is planning for. My understanding is that FDOT is providing for all ages and abilities facilities. This does not provide a facility for all people. If you're biking with a child, there is no way I'm going to cross a free flow ramp and intersection, as John had mentioned too, with the conditions matching Interstate 95. I consider myself to be someone on the full range of cycling spectrum. I have a very slow oriented way of getting to work when I take Tri-Rail down to Delray Beach. My bike is big, it's heavy, it's well lit up, and it's very interesting trying to get across the interstate interchange at Atlantic Avenue. Not to mention, I couldn't make it across Okeechobee Boulevard during peak hours. It's the level of traffic stress encountered by people, as I've said before, at these interchange projects is just going to be too high and too detrimental to a person's capabilities and desires to go on a bike. Now, that being said, I've biked numerous times to Woolbright Road, and I hope that the project team has gone to Jupiter Donuts down there because I absolutely love it. And bike ride to Jupiter Donuts is like my perfect Sunday morning. But this type of project is going to make it difficult for even someone like me who considers himself able to ride on this road now in the future. So I understand that we are doing this project because you're having backups and a number of rear end and substantial crashes on 95, and that's very unfortunate. Do I think that this is the right solution? I don't believe so. And I hate to say it in that particular means, but we're creating some real barriers at our only way to get across 95 with every interchange project that it seems to come before the Bicycle Trails and Pedestrian Committee. It's very difficult to envision a future where people really feel comfortable biking with these type of projects. And I mean, frankly, if I have anything else to say is, would you bike with your family across these types of things? Would you take your family on a donut ride to Jupiter Donuts across Woolbright Road? And frankly, I wouldn't take children on this road. Let's think more about how we provide at least a shared use path and a designated bike lane or buffered bike lane. I say and, not or, because we need to also think about the pedestrian facilities as well. 5-foot sidewalks next to 40-mile-per-hour road is abysmal. Absolutely abysmal. Thank you.
So I also want to quickly note that the project corridor is about 1.3 miles from A1A, which does have direct connection over the intercoastal. So this is definitely the opportunity to make meaningful connections for all ages and abilities.
Okay, Margie, who's next?
So I have Bob next, followed by Ted.
Okay, and I saw Fatty had his hand raised too.
So I have Bob, Ted, Sally, Patty, and then a public comment.
Okay. All right, Bob.
Yeah, several things, but just going through this last discussion, there's a really significant improvement to cycling across 95 at this point, and it's like about a mile south on Southwest 23rd, which is Gulf Road. And it's not the perfect road because there's some spots in it that are not really great, but we can make some really nice improvements to cycling by getting rid of those chevrons to go over 23rd, and there's no bicycle lane on that road, and there's lots of room for it. And then in addition to that, the roads east and west of there, it could easily be improved to add at least a bike lane there. And so like, we're knocking our heads and talking about millions of dollars here, and just a few minutes away, we could go over a really nice road, but that's kind of like small compared to all this. Anyway, the question I really had started with is the last frame that I saw on the screen. I wasn't clear where the bike lanes were on Woolbright, and it was that the current or proposed new lane. So could somebody get that one back up here and tell me what's the situation currently and what we're talking about right in this short term?
Craig, can you pull up the PowerPoint so FDOT staff can address Bob's concerns?
I think the question is more where the limits of the extension of the bike lane. So if you put up the concept, we can probably go over there.
Yeah, the PDF so that we can zoom in.
Yeah.
And my staff is working to pull that up, so if you can bear with us.
Yeah, here we go.
And then Eric, like I noted, there is a public comment that we have in person,
Okay.
but we still have some member comments. I'm not sure if you want to just take the public comment first and continue after Bob's questions are addressed.
Yeah, let's take the public comment now.
Okay, do you want Bob's questions to be answered first?
We'll do it after Bob's.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess his question was where the existing bike lanes are and where the extension of the bike lanes, right?
Yes, but the question I was talking about was the frame after this one, which looked like it was a current road or something like it, but it wasn't this one.
The bike lanes right now, they end after they go over the South Florida Rail Corridor. So they end here at the intersection with A Street.
There are some bike lanes as you were going over the road now.
Yeah, over the bridge.
Over the bridge, over 95.
Over I-95. But then they end at A Street. So what we're doing is we're extending the bicycle lanes all the way to 18th.
All the way to 18th?
Yes.
Which is further.
Another west, the other way,
West. It's 8th is there, but, oh, their 18th is over there, I see, okay. So I think you basically answered my question. Right now, I know there are bike lanes over 95. So to the east of that, or where you're just the road you're showing, there are bicycle lanes on that road.
Only over I-95, but there's no designated bike lanes that continue to 18.
Okay, now I understand what you're saying. Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, Bob, did they answer any other questions?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, we'll take the public comment now, Margie.
Okay, hold on. Sir? You're allotted 3 minutes.
Thank you.
And I need your name and address.
Hi, my name is Matthew Van Voorthuizen. I live at 302 North B Street, Lakewood Beach, Florida 33460. I just wanted to make it absolutely clear that I'm very disappointed that we are spending all of this money to continue to subsidize cars, and we're not charging any tolls on I-95, which I think is a ridiculous waste of money. I also think on top of that, that we have these lanes where bicycles have to mix with car traffic. That's at high speed, like Okeechobee Boulevard. I appreciate that earlier comment. And again here at Wilbright Road. And it's very, very dangerous, and we should never, ever be doing that. Those lanes, those cars need to stop so that they can allow the bicycles to get by. And then also I was very concerned about the, well, actually I appreciate that there is a wall that protects pedestrians from the car traffic. But it really doesn't make sense to put the wall between the bicycles and the pedestrians. That wall should be protecting the bicyclists as well, because the cars are a threat. I've hardly ever hear of a bicyclist putting a pedestrian in the hospital, but a car will basically put a bicyclist in a coffin. So the wall needs to be further over. It needs to be protecting the bicyclist as well. And if you want an example of what I I've seen that works much better. Just look at what they did recently to 10th Avenue North. There are still some room for improvement over there with the wall, but the way they rearranged the entrances and exits for I-95 made it so much safer for pedestrians, and we really need to do that everywhere. Thank you.
So Eric,
Yes.
Eric calls up, sorry. I have Ted, Sally, followed by Polly.
Okay. Ted.
I just have a short comment going way back to the shared use paths. As a guide dog user, it's not a good thing because people aren't looking and seeing that I'm blind and my dog only knows so much. So I prefer a bike lane than shared use.
Okay, Ted, but any other comments or?
I have Sally, followed by.
Okay, Sally.
Sally Shannon, I just wanted to add my support to a number of committee members who have made the point about providing safety for cyclists, and that there is an emphasis. I think this committee has frequently commented on the information we've received about the percentage of people who will cycle right on the roadway versus percentage who are interested in cycling, but only in a situation where they feel safe. And so I appreciated particularly Craig and Brian's comments. I thought they were very thoughtful and to the point, and just wanted to add my support to that.
And I have Fadi next.
Okay, Fadi.
Yeah, I'm looking at the cross section. Basically, you're gonna have a 5-foot bike lane, a raised separation, then a 6-foot sidewalk. Now, I agree with all the rest. I mean, this is really an opportunity to provide a buffered bike lane if possible. But if not, if this is the maximum width of the bridge, why not providing a 6-foot bike lane and a 5-foot sidewalk? And again, the buffer can be maybe between the road and the bike lane. So this is kind of an option.
Okay, we'll consider that. Again, this is it's going into final design, and all this will be fine tuned, and we'll have one public meeting during the final design phase at 60%, and all these comments will be reflected, and that's something that we can consider.
Okay, Margie, who's next?
I just want to double check. Sometimes you guys jump. No, we're good. With any other hands raised, I don't know if you have any other comments.
I'm sorry, you cut out.
We don't have any other hands raised, so I don't know if you have any other comments.
Well, I'm just, looking at the DOT manual. I guess, well, my question on the context zone was not answered yet.
C4.
C4?
So, urban general.
Okay, so C4. I'm just reading. .223.211. For new construction projects, a 7-foot buffered bike lane is the standard. To me, if you're widening a bridge, that's new construction. I just would, I kind of want to echo everything else people said. It's 2020. FDOT has a Vision Zero policy, and maybe I misinterpreted. What I've heard is basically it's not in the budget to do it right, to provide good bike and pedestrian facilities. So one technical solution would be, maybe you mentioned vertical clearance. If you had a separate bridge for bike and peds, that could be at a slightly higher vertical profile to be over 95 more. You're saying you can't keep widening the bridge, you don't want to spend the money to replace the whole bridge. That might be something to consider. Yeah, I would revisit the lane widths. There's got to be places where 11-foot lanes coming off of, you know, double lanes or whatever works, or just, you know, look at that a little more. I don't know. I know it's an informational item, but it's really disappointing to hear basically we're going to final design. This is what you're getting. I'd either like to see a buffered bike lane or a wider sidewalk. One of the two would help. I don't know if it's possible as the committee to write a letter to the governing board recommending the project's not funded until it has proper facilities, or just that we should put something in the public record as a motion. Maybe if some of the committee, I think a lot of committee members feel strongly about this, and I'm just thinking that we should at least put something in the record with some of the common themes as a suggestion as chair. And I'm not, maybe with staff, I'd be interested if you have any suggestions on kind of what we could do. And my other, I guess for the DOT team, where are we in the public participation process? Is it can we file something with your categorical exclusion analysis in there? Is there still possible for us to give comments with your NEPA process?
Well, the category exclusion 1 are for projects that do not require a public hearing. So as far as the PD&E phase, we're wrapping that up and it will be completed probably within the next month. And the public involvement, we will have a newsletter out to our mailing list explaining the process and the project and the schedule and what's remaining when construction would happen.
So has it been approved as who actually signs off that it's a categorical exclusion, and where is it possible for us to send a letter or something to that person at DOT or FHWA?
It's actually Office of Environmental Management in Tallahassee.
Okay.
I can get you the name of the person who will be signing that. I need to double check that. I think it's Mr. Watts, but I need to double check on that.
Okay.
So Eric, in regards to your question of what the BTPAC can do in regards to this, so the BTPAC can make a motion asking the board to request modifications to the I-95 Woolbright design to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. Your motion can be general or specific, whatever your preference is, and we will share the request with the TPA board.
Okay. Is there any of the committee members any interest in making a motion to improve the design to share with the governing board?
Motion to make a recommendation for the FDOT to look at buffered bike lanes or shared use path in order to increase pedestrian bicycle safety over the I-95 interchange on Woolbright.
Okay. We could take a, I'll wait for discussion. Is there a second on the motion?
Matthew, second.
Discussion. I guess I don't know if I'm allowed to make a friendly amendment, but the other issue I heard echoed was the hot rights, or not the free flow off ramps. If I was wondering if someone want to make a friendly amendment for that also.
I accept the amendment.
And I think the person who seconded also has to accept the amendment.
Matthew, accept the amendment.
Okay. Discussion on the motion Well, I guess you want to read it with the free flow ramps also.
Sure, so I put the motion on the screen,
Okay.
and I'll read it, but I just want to confirm that it is correct with everyone. And everyone's okay with it. So it is a motion to make a recommendation for FDOT to look at buffered bike lanes or shared use path to increase pedestrian bicycle safety over the I-95 interchange over Woolray.
And the friendly amendment was to control or eliminate the free flow ramps. Okay, discussion. We have a motion. Is there any further discussion?
Body's putting his hand up. This is Brian.
Okay. Yeah, no, Patty. Yeah.
Okay, could you hear me now?
Yeah, very good.
Okay. I think there was suggestion to provide some kind of pedestrian or bike push button, maybe to interrupt the free flow. I would be in favor of that, but clearly I will not be in favor of eliminating the free flow. This will have significant impact on operations. So we need to be balanced in our opinion and basically what we suggest.
Okay, I guess the original Gene and who was the people that made the motion, you want to accept Fatty's change?
It was Stephanie that made the motion.
Oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry.
Yeah, ped activated is fine.
I accept the amendment.
Gene Matthews, I accept the amendment.
Okay. I think everyone can see the motion, right? Is there?
I was going to say, I can read it aloud.
Yeah, read it.
Right before we take the roll call vote,
Okay.
if you guys are ready.
Any other discussion?
Okay. So
Okay, read the motion.
I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Yep, no, go ahead, read it. And we'll...
I was going to say the motion that we have on the screen is a motion to recommend buffered bike lanes or shared use path within the I-95 Woolbright project limits and ped actuated devices to free flow ramps to enhance safety for vulnerable users. Sally Shannon. Aye. Eric Ferguson.
Aye.
Ted Goodenough.
Yay.
Michael Howe.
Aye.
Gene Matthews.
Aye.
Yash Nagal.
Aye.
Fadi Nassar. Fadi.
Aye.
And Brian, I'm here for your name next. Brian Harding.
Aye.
Gonna mute. Getting a lot of feedback here. Thank you. Michael Owens.
Aye.
Craig Pender.
Aye.
John Roach.
Aye.
Brian Rusher.
Aye.
Bob Saban.
Aye.
Joanne Scarry is absent. Stephanie Filburn.
Aye.
It passes unanimously, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Oh, I thought Mr. Goodenough said nay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I understood that as yay. Ted, can you confirm verbally, please?
It'd say nay.
Thank you. My apologies.
All right, item 3B, Southeast Florida Transportation Council's 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, RTP summary. Jessica Jocelyn, RTP consultant from Kittleson and Associates, will present the item.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I'm very excited to be here today to present the Regional Transportation Plan. This may have been the first time that you all have heard of this plan. So just on this opening slide, I wanted to give some background that this plan began in 2018.
Jessica, can you try to move the mic a little closer? It's a little hard to hear you, Jessica.
Okay. Yeah, that's where I was. Is that better?
Much better.
Oh, great.
Yep.
So as I was saying, the Regional Transportation Plan began in 2018, and it was recently adopted by our Southeast Florida Transportation Council August 7th, 2020, so just a couple months ago now. And I'm really excited to present this plan because you're going to see later on in the presentation, we're actually recommending new policies to take to Tallahassee that really intend to move forward, becoming a multimodal seamless transportation system in Southeast Florida. So I think it's a nice follow-up to the conversation you just had about safe facilities for everyone. So moving forward, I mentioned the Southeast Florida Transportation Council, and some of you may not be familiar with that council. So I wanted to give just a little bit of background that this council is a formal council funded by the 3 MPOs. It was formally created through a memorandum of understanding back in 2005 between your TPA, the Broward MPO, and the Miami-Dade Transportation Planning Organization. So this council, its main product is the Regional Transportation Plan. And the state asked the 3 MPOs do this by combining their 3 long-range transportation plans. So that would be the one you adopted, I believe, end of last year, with the Broward and Miami-Dade TPO, just to make sure that we're all consistent and there's no conflicts as we cross county lines. So I'm going to jump ahead here. It looks like we have a bit of an older, and I want to keep you guys on schedule. So defining the regional network is our first step in this process. This is actually quite a task to take on. So out of all of the transportation facilities in Southeast Florida, the technical group asks themselves, what do we constitute as regional? And here you see a map of what we ended up calling regional. And it is data-driven and objective. It's not subjective. And the data we use is based on how we classify facilities, and we determined for the regional plan that we would have principal arterials, so facilities carrying large quantities of people and goods. Also the strategic intermodal system network, which includes railways, hubs, roadways, and waterways. And then this round, we included also all active rail lines, knowing that transit is really important to the region and is going to become even more important in time as we look forward. One thing I wanted to know on the regional network, why this exercise is important, is that there is funding associated with a facility being labeled as regional. And that pot is small. It's the Transportation Regional Incentive Program pot of money. But it is important when dollars become involved and we can do projects. So this exercise is very important. From there, we move to the goals, objectives, and performance measures development. And this is very similar to what you do with your long-range transportation plan goals development. So we looked at all 3 MPO's goals and came up with the 4 goals you see here: multimodal system and land use, health, environment, and safety, economy, and equity and public support. Sorry, there's a delay on the clicker that's getting ahead here. So after we identified our goals, we walked through what some of the issues are in the region, and we wanted to get specific. So as I was noting before, we could recommend policies based on what we want to change to accommodate our future vision. So on the left there, you see growing population. So our region, all 3 counties, recognize that with 1,000 people a week forecast to move to South Florida over the next 25 years, we really are going to have trouble moving that quantity of people on the system and how we develop it today. The next element we are calling mismatch investments. So we actually took a look back in history and found that the last set of regional projects and cost feasible plans for the MPOs actually funded 14% of transit investments, but the desires and unfunded needs was almost 100% transit. So there was a mismatch of what we could do with our money versus what we actually wanted to invest in. And then for limited access, what we found doing a data-driven analysis is that only 5% of our population can access high capacity transit by walking, and only 10% of jobs are accessible from high capacity transit walking. So just the way we're developing our land in an auto-centric nature is creating limited ability for people to use other options safely. So once we identified those specific problems, we really zoomed in at looking at transit needs, funding needs, and land use needs in order to accommodate our vision. So specifically, we did this through a scenario planning exercise. And here you see on the left, as I was saying, we looked at high capacity transit needs, growth and development needs from a land use perspective, and then also took a really close look at financial information and how we fund our projects. And this concluded in developing 3 scenarios that you see on the right. Scenario 1 is our status quo. So if we weren't to change anything, our funding restrictions or programs stayed the same, our transportation options stayed the same, and our land use stayed the same. We tested to see what that would result in. Scenario 2 is where we started to look at what if scenarios. What if we could do anything? What the sky's the limit? So with scenario 2, we developed collectively as a region a regional transit scenario. And that scenario actually included your 561 plan from your long range transportation plan. So your enhanced transit corridors throughout Palm Beach County. And then it also included Broward and Miami-Dade transit. Now, under that scenario, we also looked at how would we fund that type of system. And we used dials, if you will, as a group to look at what funding sources have the most opportunity to be flexed to actually fund transit and what would be needed to get that flexibility in the funding. Then in scenario 3, the growth and development scenario, we applied that same transit network from scenario 2, but we adjusted land use. So in that scenario, we went, if the new growth was placed strategically and intentionally around these transit corridors, what type of mobility would we get and what type of ridership would we get? So with those 3 scenarios, I'm excited to share that the data-driven objective-based process did show us quite a bit of improvement. So the unchanged future, that's your trend scenario, the do nothing scenario. And the alternative future there is reporting the results of scenario 3, the growth and development. And you see there's a 350% increase in ridership. So we're really giving that other option that we've been saying we want to provide. But even I'd say more importantly, we're improving access. And a travel demand model, with ridership can only tell you so much, but the access exercise using a GIS-based analysis showed we increased access, walkable access to high capacity transit from people's homes from 5% to 35%. And then walkable access to jobs from high capacity transit, we went from 10% to 50%. So we really were able to show through this data-driven process that our assumptions and seeing other regions build this type of network really does provide a sustainable future for the 7.5 million people that are going to be coming here. And then with this group, I have to know, and you all know this, we also know building a high capacity transit system with supportive land use creates walking and biking trips. So folks won't even need to get in a bus or in a car potentially in the future with this system. That said, so stepping out of the scenario planning work we did still have to look at what we invested in collectively as a region through the adoption of your long range transportation plans, because the what if scenario doesn't really exist yet, right? So in terms of what we funded under our current rules in planning, 76% of our funds went to roadway and freight, and 18% went to transit. And if you remember, I said 14% went to transit last round. So I think we are headed in the right direction to serve a multimodal system to an urbanized area. And 4% went to complete streets, and 2% went to systems management, so more of your signals and technology type projects. Here, I just wanted to note and remind everyone, we've been doing this multimodal assessment and heading in this direction for years. 2013 was the 750 plan.
where the region was saying they wanted to move this way, and it didn't have legs or go as far as we had hoped. So we're hoping with this regional plan, we'll be able to keep that moving. And then this slide is just showing even more great strides we've made as a region towards moving to a multimodal seamless safe system. And now I wanted to walk through the policies specifically that the region is taking to Tallahassee. So right now, Broward MPO is kind of leading this mission, working with the council, but they are going to go to the Secretary of the Department of Transportation and state representatives to move forward on some of these policies that I will be walking through. So I'm curious to get any feedback and hear from you all after these few slides, ending the presentation. So this first policy is regional transit with supporting infrastructure is key to support growth and long-term mobility. So with this, as it says, we just want to recognize through policy that transit is really needed to keep Florida sustainable based again on the 7.5 million people we're expecting. We also wanted to know item B in this policy, that the region truly understands that auto travel is always going to be occurring. It's important to our economy and keep people moving, but we just want to recognize that it's not the only option. And then the third item here is more related to the biking and walking component. And this policy element actually was contributed from the TPA board representative on the council, and that the first last mile is critical for any transit system to be successful. The second policy is related to the land use exercise we did. So we recognize as a region that complementary land use is essential for any of this to be successful. Based on the data-driven analysis, we know that without land use changes, building transit is not going to have the impact we want. And we also wanted to note that new development should be occurring around those transit routes, of course, to get the most benefit from this land use change. And last, we noted under the land use policy, again, that the short walk bike trips are more possible in building in a different way than we are today. The third of the four policies is the increased flexibility within funding programs is crucial policy. And through our analysis, we came up with these four sub-bullets under the policy. The first being that the state funding programs are too restrictive and do not allow for implementing transit investments in the manner needed to serve our rapidly growing urbanized area. So the region understands we have ability to fund transit, we just need more ability to fund transit and would like to explore that, working with the state for any opportunities to do so. And for B, greater flexibility is needed with existing state funding sources, so they may be used to fund transit. So that's kind of just what I was just describing, a solution to it being too restrictive. We note here that each dollar spent on transit will have greater impact on moving people than each dollar spent on highways. And that's strictly just how you can move so many more people in buses than in individual cars. And then the last, again, was very important to highlight that we still need to maintain and operate our highway system. It's just as important. People use cars as well, and we wanted to recognize that in this policy. And the last is that new revenue sources are necessary. So this is a policy where we're understanding collectively as a region to build, operate, and maintain your 561 plan, to build the SMART plan in Miami, to build the startup plan in Broward. We need more money, even if we have more flexibility in what we have today. So those again are the policies that will be taken to Tallahassee. Today is just an information item for you all, but we are going to your board next week for an actual resolution. So this slide is a sneak peek of a website that we're building called MoveFloridaForward.com. The three MPOs are leading an effort to conduct outreach. We're working with Melissa Booth from your TPA on identifying the right groups to bring this to. And the action that we're asking as we go out to folks is signing a resolution or a letter of support
So again, that backup can go with Broward MPO to our state capital to seek change. So stay tuned for this website, and I appreciate the time to present to you today. I'll take any questions or comments.
Okay, before committee discussion, staff, are there any public comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have a public comment. I do want to note that it is a little bit hard to hear you.
Okay.
You're really low on our
Is
end.
it better now, or is it this?
Okay, thank you. So I do have a public comment, and I also have committee members with their hands raised.
Okay.
Are you ready for the public comment?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, we're ready.
Hi, my name is Matthew Bornhazen. I just want to say thank you for taking this initiative. I think it's going to be really, really helpful to reduce our dependence on cars and reprioritize the way we're funding things. In particular, I would really like to see that we stop widening I-95 and associated interchanges, and instead try to find other ways to reduce the traffic that goes through there. I think one really good way would be to implement tolls on I-95. And I was just thinking $17 million of project that is going through Woolbright Road is a lot of money. And that money could be used for a lot of good in improving transit and improving greenways and improving pedestrian access. So I hope that we'll be able to make all those changes. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Jim Matthews. I just wanted to comment. That was a fabulous presentation, and it does point us that we're going in the right direction. And I think looking at the land use is one of the big keys. So thank you so much.
Hey, Margie, was there? Oh, go ahead.
Sure, I do have that Stephanie and Josh have their hands raised.
Okay, Stephanie.
I thank you, Stephanie Thoburn. Just, I support transit, multimodal abilities, but what the question I have is that what analysis was done as part of this to address pandemic implications related to land use? I mean, if you look at what's happening right now, we're in a recession. However, real estate is not being impacted, and that predominantly is related to more suburban type development and design. And the only reason why I bring this up is because, pushing forward and going and talking to the public, you should have those kinds of answers for you as you try to gain support. And I think it's a good idea. I just worry about people thinking about urban, how you brand it or how you go forward and talk about an urban design. In Jupiter, people don't like urban designs. They think urban design is bad, but urban design doesn't necessarily have to be bad and doesn't have to look like New York City. So just want to try and put that out there as a cause for concern.
Thank you. May I respond now, Chair, to that question?
I guess he was asking you, Stephanie, I think.
So I think if I can respond to that. Sorry, it's really hard to hear you. Is she okay to respond to that?
Yes, you can't hear me.
So great comments. Thank you for bringing that up. In terms of pandemic impacts, the study wrapped up. It was adopted August 7th, but we really finished the scenario planning last year. we would have never expected this to be our 2020. But you make a very good point. And as we go out, we're working with the public participation subcommittee to make sure that the right messages are being shared. In terms of the land use question specifically, so in the scenario planning, we did very high level what ifs, and really the conclusion wasn't the specifics of what to do. It was more just we wanted to put in policy that we as a region recognize you can't independently plan transportation from your land use decisions. So I think as we alter and change land use, it is going to be done in a manner for that moment in time, looking forward based on additional analysis. But this policy is very high level, just saying we need to have complementary land use to high capacity transit for people to use the system. So what that looks like in Jupiter, depending on the transit, planned transit in Jupiter versus downtown Miami, very, very different. And we're trying to use the term right sizing rather than urban development, and trying to be careful with our words. So if I didn't say that this round, glad you brought it up because it's important. And it came up from your Palm Beach TPA representative actually when we presented a few months ago as well. There was concern to use the term density and urban design.
Eric, you're muted.
I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I tried a different headset. Fadi?
I also have Yash too.
Okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Fadi.
Yep, and Yash. You're muted, Fadi, I think.
Yeah, this presentation, as Stephanie mentioned, I'm all for improving pedestrian, improving, non-single car use, improving bus stops, access to buses. But, this presentation probably could have heard it 10 years ago. It would make sense. But today, with the way we're going, I think things need to be reevaluated. High capacity transit, I don't think is the answer, and people know that. I mean, if you look now what's happening with Uber and others, and trying to create van size, multi-use, more flexible, more. I think we need to rethink what we used to do 10 years ago, and we need to figure out what's appropriate for here, Palm Beach County. Yeah, there may be one corridor, maybe Okeechobee, another corridor, maybe north-south in the urban area that may support higher transit, higher capacity transit. But you need to be realistic what would work for the county-wide and not kind of be too much following some kind of a vision instead of having the data to support where would we get more riders. So unless something is studied and proven, maybe you want to start with some location, I think we need to be much more realistic than the image being proposed. If you spend a lot of money on transit project does not work, it's going to hurt transit. So I think we need to figure out carefully how we move from here. And again, I support what Stephanie mentioned. I think we need to be not only realistic, but we need to ensure mobility for everyone in the best way possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Fadi.
I have Yash next.
Okay, Yash.
Hey, so interesting comment about the Ubers and how how public perception is changing. But I just want to bring back a quick point that a bus can always support 60 people, and Uber is always going to support like 4 or 5 at max. So in terms of long-term solutions, I kind of don't agree with that people are not going to use transit in the future, or transit's not going to be a viable option, because with capacity, a bigger vehicle is a bigger vehicle, and you can just carry more people on it. So anyway, that's not my question. My question is, in your ridership projections, do you include a minimum frequency or some kind of frequency assumption to do the projection, or is the frequency assumption same as the 561 plan?
Yes, so we do have our own through the scenario planning frequency assumptions, and we actually, that's a good question, because the 561 plan we followed was more of where the lines were, and in the scenario planning, we identified low, medium, or high investment levels, and based on what level of investment was assigned to a particular line on the map, we had specific frequencies that were coded in the model. All frequencies were relevant to more of a high capacity premium transit system, but I'm happy to share those details with you. If it's of interest, we have a whole table for every route and the frequencies assumed.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Eric, I don't see any other hands raised. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. But I do have a public, well, actually I have two public comments. One from Sylvia, who's in the room with us, and then one virtually from Christine.
Okay, let's, yeah, we can take the comments. Sylvia first. Is that how you want to do it? Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Sylvia Rotella, and my address is 302 Northeast Street, Lake Worth, Florida, 33460. And I just have questions for you guys. So I don't know who could answer these questions, but the first one is, how many miles of greenways could be built with the 17 million that is planned for Woolbright Road? That's the first one, and it's interrelated with the previous presentation, but it's also interrelated with this one. So how many miles of greenways could be built with the 17 million that is planned for Woolbright Road? The second question is it possible to expand west with tri-rail on Southwest Street? And the reason why I asked that question is because Southwest 10th Street connects I-95 with Sawgrass Expressway, and a lot of people that are coming between east and west on that road complain about the traffic, it's slowing down. So I don't know if it's possible to expand tri-rail west on that road, and what improvements is being planned for Southwest 10th Street that connects between I-95 and Sawgrass Expressway? That's all.
Okay.
And the next public comment I have is virtually from Kashid Mahayadin.
Okay.
And Kashid, you'll need to unmute on your end, and you are allotted 3 minutes.
Good morning, everybody. Kashid Mahayadin with Palm Beach County Planning. Yesterday I heard a statistic, so I just wanted to correct Jessica on the math thing. She was saying that one bus could take 80%, that's the capacity, and the car is 1 person per car. The correction would be if you are looking at apples to apples, the car is 5-seater usually. You know, I have 5 belts in my car, but that's just the capacity to capacity. I think it should be always based on what is, generally how much occupancy is on the car versus what is the generally occupancy, average occupancy or median occupancy or whatever. That is the better comparison when you talk about statistics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rashid.
So, Mr. Chair, that was the end of the public comments that I received.
Okay.
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. And this was just,
Oh, I'm sorry, Brian has his hand raised.
okay.
Sorry, I have a bit of a technical question for Jessica if she's still around. And it has to do with the deliverable that was related to scenario concepts and performance measures. Is Jessica still available?
Yes, I am here.
Hey, Jessica, thank you. From the looks of it, I'm trying to get a handle on the best approaches that local governments should be planning for, because we do have some opportunities to look at scenario planning and specifically for bicycle pedestrian planning and how it relates to transit in the future. And from what I can tell, it looks like the alternative growth measures in the plan seem to benefit the access to walking and biking the most. Is that something that you generally understand as well, or is it something that I might be reading wrong in the report, just trying to glance through it quickly?
No, I'm glad the report is written in a way that you correctly interpreted it. So we did find with moving new growth that comes to Florida, so not existing, we're not suggesting people move from their communities in the way they are now, but as we accommodate new growth, it would be around the transit facilities. So under that scenario, when we did that, access increased significantly from the home and jobs.
Great. Okay, thank you. I think it's important to recognize that how much land use plays into transportation decisions. I know we talk a lot about design and projects on this committee, and we seem to get into that quite a bit, but without the supportive uses for transit, it's all lost, and ultimately would, you know, the most benefit comes from the uses in particular that support the alternative modes.
Yeah, I personally found the accessibility measures more impactful and relatable than a ridership number. So I was really happy to see using CommunityViz, a GIS-based software, that we went from, I think I was saying, I don't have my notes right here, but 5 to 35% people could walk from their home to a transit station. And then from jobs to transit, I think I said it was 10 to 50% of our population. So pretty significant, just from a planning exercise. That wasn't a detailed analysis with very specific information.
Right.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Okay, any more hands raised, Margie? I'd like to move on.
I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, good discussion. Item C, US 1 North Palm Beach Lane Repurposing Project. Kim Delaney, Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, Director of Strategic Development and Policy, to present.
Good morning, guys. Kim Delaney for the record from TCRPC. So thanks for the opportunity to present just an overview of a proposed project that is to be located on US 1 in North Palm Beach. And I think it's a good relevant discussion. It touches on a number of discussion themes that have been raised this morning about context-sensitive design and best accommodating the range of anticipated users. I think those are the two kind of overriding points that are most reflected by the design. The Planning Council is assisting the village with funding from the village and the TPA to evaluate and propose, pardon me, a lane repurposing alternative for the corridor. And so this is just an overview presentation. We recently presented to FDOT's Design Review Committee because ultimately this section is a RRR project, and there's a lot of planets to align between a lane repurposing, of course, the village public review and approval process, the potential acquisition of TPA funds, and the construction of an alternative corridor, all within the context of a lane of a RRR project that's anticipated for design in 2024. And I think construction right now is looking at 2025, 26 or so. Next slide. I can't advance my slides, Margie. There we go, perfect. So so this segment is of course a component of the US1 multimodal corridor study that I think board members are very familiar with. The council assisted the TPA in some public outreach and a bit of analysis as well. And that corridor looked at the 42-mile segment of US1 in Palm Beach County. Pardon me. The subject segment in North Palm Beach is the segment from the Parker Bridge to the Ehrman, gosh, I'm so sorry. It's to the Ehrman River Bridge, just north of North Lake Boulevard. And that segment is identified as a Tier 1 opportunity to improve its design and performance. The summary from the US1 multimodal corridor study is that the current condition is that bicycle pedestrian facilities are deficient today. We have 3 and 4 foot paved shoulders to accommodate cyclists with 5-foot sidewalks. It is possible the segment could be a good lane repurposing candidate, and we've done the traffic analysis at this point to conclude that presumption is correct. And so we have more laneage than necessary for projected traffic volumes, considering both traffic projections and the village's ongoing redevelopment efforts, which I'll summarize in a moment, which would increase the mix of uses and development potential of the corridor. But with those things all considered, we can lose 2 lanes in this section if the village wants to, and go with a 5 or 4 lane section, and I'll describe that in a moment. The study concluded we have a need for improved bicycle pedestrian facilities, not a surprise. And because there's a need for those facilities, and because it's such a good candidate for a lane repurposing, the multimodal corridor study designated this section as a priority Tier 1. The design on the screen is the recommended design that came out of the multimodal corridor study, different than the one the village wants to pursue, but nonetheless, it underscores the existing condition, which is 6 lanes with paved shoulders, and instead a 4-lane alternative that would include improved facilities. This concept happens to have separated bike lanes. The village has a different concept it wants to pursue, but nonetheless, the kind of the implication is the same. Better facilities for bike ped users is a goal, and there's funds available to implement that. Next slide. There we go. I think you kind of need to click it a few times and it'll animate the balance of the slide. I thought it was a static image. And so this aerial, go ahead and click a few times, and one more after that. There we go. And so this aerial illustrates the subject section. As you can see, PGA Boulevard to the north is the northern edge of the image, but the corridor actually, go ahead and click again. The corridor itself actually runs from Parker Bridge, which is a facility that has no bike lanes. It has a sidewalks, and it has kind of a painted stripe so people can race across the bridge and get north of to the northern section of North Palm Beach. But our corridor runs from that bridge south to the Ehrman River Bridge. And so, pardon me, Anchorage Drive north and south bifurcate our segments. And so we have 3 different conditions. We have a Parker Bridge to Anchorage segment. We have an Anchorage to Anchorage segment. And then we have an Anchorage to Ehrman River Bridge section. Those are all different segments. Existing conditions are illustrated in the photos on the left-hand side of the slide. And village staff actually went out and took these photos just last week. Although the text in the photos is a little small, what you would see if you could zoom in is that our corridor today has 11-foot travel lanes and mostly 3-foot with a few 4-foot paved shoulders. And then we have a planting strip, which is a 5-foot utility strip, and a 5-foot sidewalk. No shade, landscaping limited to the center median. Next slide. And so the council has been involved with the village for several years now in assisting with various visioning efforts, the most recent of which was a new village citizens master plan that was developed through a charrette process back in 2016. That was the first master plan developed for the village. And that master plan identified US1 as a as a deficient corridor from a bike ped facility standpoint, raised the prospect of a lane repurposing, identified a few various cross sections that could otherwise replace the existing conditions, and looked at a series of redevelopment opportunities in the village. The village took those recommendations and has been busy going through public hearings and approvals to implement the recommendations from the Citizens Master Plan. Particularly, the village just adopted a new form-based code to apply to particularly the US 1 corridor in a few significant ways. What that new form-based code does is really restructure the relationship of private property to the US 1 corridor. Instead of setbacks, buildings now have build to lines, so they'll be set at the edge, just 7 feet off the right-of-way line, actually, of US 1. The code provides increased densities and intensities. It provides a broader mix of uses. It requires parking lots to be interconnected as redevelopment occurs over time. It also requires driveways to be consolidated or eliminated, which is a real material difference when it comes to bike ped planning because it changes the usability of facilities that are located along the edge of property. And also, there's a rear alley system that exists along both sides of US 1, which is really remarkable. And so the form-based code requires properties utilize rear alley access where possible, which further reduces the interference of driveways with the, if you will, the US 1 right-of-way, and improves the bike ped conditions along the corridor. And the two images on the screen at the right-hand side illustrate what the old code permitted, which is kind of a traditional suburban office park format, and the new code requirements, which clearly illustrate a much more urban, walkable, mixed-use commercial and residential context that's more geared to better bike ped activity. Next slide. And so in doing field work on the corridor, of course, there's lots of different users out on the network. And today's discussion has been very helpful, I think, in setting the context for this project to be considered further by the committee. There's lots of different users on the corridor, but most of them aren't cyclists that are comfortable in bike lanes. Most of the users on the corridor tend to be pedestrians, kids walking to school with parents. Illustrated top center, there's an elementary school just a block off the corridor. The corridor actually provides connections to the North Palm Beach Country Club, which is a major recreational destination within the village. There are additional parks located just off the corridor and some commercial nodes. And so the users today are varied, but the majority of those users are not traditional bike lane users. The majority of those users are users that we would find in shared use path conditions, if shared use path conditions were available, and otherwise are on the 5 foot sidewalks that have no shade and limited utility. Next slide. And so as we've been assisting the village in evaluating different options, of course, the village and its residents have become much more familiar with both the complete streets guidelines from DOT and the MP and the TPA. They've become more knowledgeable about the idea of complete streets and particularly knowledgeable about context considerations. And so this corridor is kind of a C3, C4 condition. It's really a C3 condition, even though it's coded as a C4. It doesn't really have the urban center characteristics. So although one day it may grow up and redevelop over time to have more urban characteristics, but it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid. And again, of course, we're all familiar with the different types of cyclists that are out there on the network, the majority of whom really are not going to be comfortable in a bike lane, but want to be on a grade separated facility. Next slide. And so with that, again, this aerial illustrates the subject corridor again. What is envisioned by the village is a modified design that would better accommodate the types of users that are out on the network today and anticipated in the future. And so the red lines illustrate the existing conditions, and those existing conditions are not proposed to change. The village doesn't have the funding and there's no project in motion at this point to make any modifications. Again, north of the Parker Bridge, we've got 5 foot sidewalks, and we actually have 5 foot bike lanes that begin just north of the touchdown of the Parker Bridge. the bridge itself has 5-foot sidewalks and no bike facilities at all. And then south of North Lake Boulevard, we have 5-foot sidewalks and 3 to 4 foot shoulders. So that's kind of the surrounding context. And what the village is proposing is 3 different design alternatives for the 3 different segments that I noted. The heart of the project is that arrow in the middle, which is the multimodal village center, if you will. The segment from Anchorage Drive north to south is the candidate where the village is considering a 6 to 4 lane repurposing. And with that repurposing, what the village is considering is a set of 12-foot shared use paths and 5-foot bike lanes. The village understands it can provide just a shared use path in this context, actually. But after discussions with FDOT, the recommendation has morphed from a much wider shared use path, again, which is the village's prerogative if it wanted to explore that, and instead go with a shared use path of 12 feet, which is the DOT standard, and then a 5-foot bike lane instead of leaving the shoulder in the corridor. North and south of that segment, the village has the opportunity to drop down to 5 lanes. It needs 3 lanes in the northbound direction to maintain the stacking necessary for the Parker Bridge, which in peak hour, peak season has a pretty long queue when the bridge opens, particularly in the PM rush hour. And so to accommodate that peak queue, the recommendation is to go with a 5-lane segment north of the bridge. The village is only looking to move the curb on one side of the road. So the 3-lane section northbound would remain, but the village would like to install wider sidewalks. And then in the southbound section, the village is considering moving the curb in that location to have a section that matches the heart of the district, if you will, with a 5-foot bike lane and 12-foot path. Similar section proposed just south of Anchorage Drive South, leading to the Earman River Bridge. In that location, the North Lake Boulevard intersection has a very heavy PM peak hour demand as well. And so traffic routinely backs up from North Lake Boulevard back to Anchorage Drive South. And so the village wants to maintain 3 lanes in the southerly direction, really where the 3rd lane is a continuous right turn lane. And so in that location, the village is considering a 5-lane section as well. Again, just the inverse, if you will, of what's proposed to the north. It would like to expand the sidewalk to a 10.5-foot sidewalk instead of the 5, and then move the curb on the northbound side, which is the east side, to go with a 5-foot bike lane and a 12-foot multi-use path. Next slide. So with that, a couple of images to illustrate the various conditions. This first one is the existing condition. It is, by all definitions, an auto-dominated corridor. So this is a typical view now of the section that exists anywhere along the corridor, but let's say between Anchorage Drive north and south. So existing condition today is 3 11-foot travel lanes in each direction, 3 to 4 foot paved shoulders, and then a 5-foot planting strip and a 5-foot sidewalk with I should note, very significant utility poles that exist just at the edge of the right-of-way on the west side. We've accommodated in the design and located all those existing poles so that we're aware of that. Next slide. The proposed condition, starting in the heart of the corridor, which is the Anchorage Drive north to south section, would look like the image that's on the screen today. What the village is pursuing or considering, rather, it hasn't decided to pursue just yet and still in the considering mode. So what the village is considering is maintaining the current median. And so those existing conditions, if you will, the median and its curbing are identified there as existing conditions to remain. And then the village is pursuing an alternative that would have 11-foot travel lanes, allow for a 5-foot bike lane, and then a 7.5-foot planting strip and a standard 12-foot shared use path. Again, the village understands it could provide just the shared use path. That was their interpretation from DOT in our last discussion. But instead, the village is suggesting a standard 5-foot bike lane would better accommodate the range of users on the corridor. It also allows the planting strip to accommodate shade trees. The standard interpretation requires a 4-foot setback, of course, from the edge of the bike lane. And so with the planting strip at 7.5 feet, it's wide enough to accommodate shade trees. If the planting strip was pinched down, there wouldn't be enough clear zone room to accommodate shade trees. So this design creates a balance between the accommodation for through cyclists, who would be those cyclists in the 5-foot bike lane, and the much more expanded local bicycle access, as well as other users on the shared use path. The shared use path is also designed in combination with the bike lane, because without the bike lane, the village would have to have a 4-foot setback from the shared use path side as well. And so with this design, alternatively, that setback for clear zone plantings is only required from the edge of the bike lane. And again, it creates a utilitarian landscape strip that can shade the corridor, as well as a wide enough shared use path to accommodate the range of users the village expects on the network. Next slide. And then we have 2 variable sections. The first one is illustrated in the northbound direction. This would be north of Anchorage Drive North to the Parker Bridge. In this location, again, the village has to maintain, or it's preferring to maintain, 3 lanes in the northbound direction to accommodate the queue from the bridge. And so, the existing condition is really not a very attractive one. It has 3 11-foot travel lanes and a 3-foot paved shoulder. What the village is suggesting to make it better, it doesn't want to incur the cost of moving the curb in that direction, because it's not proposing to repurpose the lanes, but instead what the village is pursuing is bricking in the utility strip. You can actually get 10.5 feet when you do that of shared use path on the northbound side, which is the east side. And then on the southbound side, a similar section that would match the condition it's pursuing in the heart, which is 2 11-foot travel lanes, a 5-foot bike lane, the 7.5-foot strip, and then a 12-foot multi-use path. I should note, if you can envision, this section would be aligning the North Palm Beach Country Club, which pretty much consumes all of the available space from the intersection of Anchorage Drive North up to the Parker Bridge. It's really a remarkable regional facility. It has a whole lot of bike ped activity and access by other use, skateboard, scooter, et cetera. And so the shared use, multi-use path is really very specifically designed to be able to maximize access and utility of that recreational facility for residents of the village, as well as others who access that facility in a multimodal format. Next slide. And then at the southern end of the corridor, again, the inverse of the condition, it's, again, pretty bleak. Existing condition illustrated on the left-hand side of the slide, which is the southbound direction or the west side of the road. Again, village not proposing to move the curb on that side. This is a pretty expensive project, but what it's pursuing is the potential for expanding the existing 5-foot sidewalk to become about 10.5 feet, makes it a shared use path to better accommodate users on the west side. But on the east side, there's only 2 lanes feeding the northbound segment. And so there is the potential to neck the corridor down and go down to a 2-lane section with a 5-foot bike lane and a 12-foot multi-use path. And so that is from the touchdown of the Earman River Bridge north to Anchorage Drive south. I should mention there's also a bridge replacement project that's being developed through the department at this point in time. That's moving on a separate path. I was limited in my number of slides, but I certainly can speak to that one if you have questions. That Earman River Bridge is being proposed to come back with 6 through lanes. The village is requesting 5-foot bike lanes and a 10.5-foot shared use path on that bridge when it is constructed. And again, that would match this corridor. Noting the Earman River Bridge is a unique facility because it's the only facility in the village where you actually can get a view of the water from one of the bridges today. And so a 10.5-foot shared use path is the maximum dimension possible for a shared use path, and it is a very specific facility the village is trying to pursue. That's the best it can do. It would prefer a 12-foot shared use path on that bridge as well, but right-of-way currently constrains the available area for a shared use path installation. Next slide. And so just two images just to kind of illustrate the differences in design, and I'm happy to answer questions, of course. This is the existing condition with the paved shoulder and 3 lanes in either direction. No landscaping, of course, and planting strip. Next slide. And the proposed condition, of course, much different. This is one of the 2-lane segments, so the heart of the corridor, if you will, with a 4-lane repurposing, so 2 11-foot travel lanes, a 5-foot bike lane. I should mention this is a 35-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, so there are alternatives available to the village in this corridor because of its context. So a 5-foot bike lane, as you can see, a 7.5-foot planting strip, which allows the village to install shade trees. A narrower planting strip would limit the ability for shade trees to be installed there. And then a 12-foot shared use path, which is the standard per the DOT design guidelines. And so with that, I'm happy to answer questions if you have them. And otherwise, the purpose is just for an update for the committee.
Okay, great. Margie, any hands raised?
Kim, I unmute you because I'm getting some feedback. I'm not sure if you heard me, Kim, but I did mute your microphone because I was receiving feedback. I do have a public comment, Eric, just one.
Okay.
And then I do have Stephanie with her hand raised.
Okay, public comment.
Hi, my name is Matthew Borghese. First of all, I really appreciate what's going on US 1. I think it's a great idea to make the corridor more accommodating to pedestrians and bicyclists. And I hope we can do that throughout the whole corridor. I am curious, if I heard there were some issues with funding. So I am curious what the cost per mile is for that type of work. Also, I had some concerns about some details. I noticed as you're approaching the bridge, there's 3 lanes of car traffic, and the lanes are 11 feet wide. And I feel like, in my experience, when lanes are wider, cars tend to go faster. But from what I understand of this project, the only reason there's 3 lanes there is because the cars need to queue up for the bridge. So that means they're going to be either very, very slow or stop. So they do not need 11 feet of space there, I don't think. For comparison, you can look at Forest Hill Boulevard between US 1 and I-95. If I did my measurements correctly, I believe those lanes are only 9 feet wide for that whole stretch. And the cars are much more cautious going through the neighborhood there. And not just considered toward each other, but also considered toward any bicyclists and pedestrians in the area. So I hope that we can narrow those lanes to 9 feet wide in that section. And that would give us an extra 6 feet that we could use for the tree line. And also maybe somehow improve the bicycle lane as well. So hopefully you can make something happen there. Thank you very much.
Welcome. So who has hands raised, Margie?
Stephanie, followed by John.
Okay, Stephanie.
Stephanie Thoburn. Just real quick comment. You can tell Andy that Stephanie said that maybe you should look at some grasses on the 3-lane section. Grasses, shrubs, over the utilities, things that can not require additional irrigation. I'm sure you're familiar with on Indian Town Road, between US 1 and A1A, we have a similar situation with constrained right-of-way and utilities. And in those places where we couldn't get trees in and we didn't have the space, we are looking at using perennial peanut in conjunction with grasses so that there's and the curb so that there is a visual buffer between pedestrians and the travel lane. And it doesn't require additional irrigation if you plan it out and do the correct soil amendments, and people feel a little bit better. And you can get the Fakahatchee grass, that's very soft as long as you don't cut it down. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for that. I'll pass that along to the village. So what the village's design introduces is a shade tree canopy, which is a lot harder and more expensive to do, but that's the opportunity the master plan identified. And so we've really tested a number of alternatives for the landscape strip with the clear zone to figure out what we would need to be able to get them shade trees, because that's the game changer for them. So, but that's a great suggestion, Stephanie. I'll be sure to pass that along to the village. And Margie, if I can just comment to the public comments offered by I think it was Matthew. If you can go to slide number 10, Margie, just for a moment. One of the opportunities that we've identified, if the department wants to initiate it, is that the lane widths can be modified slightly. I mean, a 3-foot paved shoulder is an awfully narrow paved shoulder, and that's just what DOT has provided out there. And so, for example, as you lead to the bridge, you could even take the outside lanes down to or the inside and middle lanes down to 10.5 feet and add a foot to the paved shoulder, which is a 33% increase in the amount of paved shoulder available to cyclists, which we think would improve the condition. We have had a lot of feedback and concern from residents who are cautious about a road diet and have noted the number of trailered boats that routinely travel through the village. As if you're familiar with the community, there's a lot of boating activity in the village with a number of boat ramps, and those trailered boats have a tough time fitting in a 9 or 10 foot lane. But maybe there's the ability to neck those lanes down just a little bit to allocate some additional right-of-way to the paved shoulder. So that's an idea that we've raised internally as a team, and I didn't want to ignore that opportunity as DOT considers all the lane widths on the corridor. If we can get just 10.5 foot lanes in a few spots instead of 11s, we have the ability to take a completely substandard facility, a 3-foot paved shoulder, and make it much safer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I have John with his hand raised.
Okay.
Thank you. Good morning, Kim. And first, I want to commend the village and you and your team on the master plan and what's proposed within there, as well as the efforts that you're proposing with this project. Just a couple different comments. And you talked about it as part of the master plan, elimination or reduction in the number of curb cuts and so forth within the corridor. So one was, have you looked at how, and it's going to take some time for that master plan to play out, over the years, and for those number of curb cuts to be reduced. So with the shared use path and so forth, have you looked at how that design would integrate with existing curb cuts and the number there? I think it often presents some concerns of, cyclists using the shared use path with a significant number of curb cuts. There can be some potential conflict between cars pulling out and so forth and cyclists using that path. And then also how your 3 cross sections integrate one another. It's interesting that you have 3 different designs within a relatively short corridor length. And how do you transition from a segment that has a bike lane, a 5-foot bike lane, to a segment that doesn't, and so forth and so on. So, to have those 3 designs and how you integrate those at those integration points, at Anchorage Drive, north and south. So that's just my 2 comments.
Mute. Thanks, John. And let me try to reply. And Margie, if you could pull up slide number 7, which illustrates how the corridor is kind of pieced together. So, this one is This one is a little trickier than others because we have these unique constraints at either end. So we don't recommend a 4-lane repurposing at the northern end because of the Parker Bridge. It technically could be approved, but it has some operational challenges. So, and we don't believe a 4-lane section is appropriate at the southern end because we need the storage for North Lake. And so initially we were looking at just the roughly 0.9 mile segment that is the Anchorage to Anchorage segment, which is kind of like the village center, if you will. And as we carried out the analysis, what we believe is the opportunity to do a better job than just what is the kind of the Main Street section, right, of redevelopment over time, and expand the utility to get more shared use path in either direction and wider sidewalk that feels like shared use path on the side where the curb's not getting moved. To your question about how we transition, we're working through those variations, John, and you know we're as you traverse the corridor, you know, one of the things to think about is the expectation of the cyclist. So if you're in West Palm Beach, right, and you're leaving, or Lake Park, and you're leaving what is a 3 to 4 foot paved shoulder, the cyclist's expectation as the cyclist traverses the corridor ideally will be with a little restriping that we can get a consistent 4 foot shoulder or 5 foot bike lane through our segment that connects to the 5 foot bike lane north of the Parker Bridge. We think that's a better condition than asking the cyclist to go up on the shared use path and losing the bike lane in the street altogether, or the bike facility altogether. And again, it's the village's prerogative, but we think that makes for a better through cyclist condition to maintain as much space as we can while still keeping a shared use path and enough landscape strip to have shade trees. So that's one of the things that we've thought through is as you travel the corridor, what's your experience if you're in the road and you go from a 3 foot section, which is really pretty tough, to mostly a 5 foot bike lane, we believe, as you get up to the bridge. Now, when you get to the bridge, you're kind of in no man's land. Unfortunately, the Parker Bridge has no facilities whatsoever, so that's a pretty dangerous condition. We're not proposing a solution for that. DOT is going to have to take that one on, you know, at some future point if they're going to cantilever, let's say, some type of path off the edge of that bridge when it ultimately is refurbished. The other question that you raised with respect to driveway conflicts is one that we think the village has done a remarkably good job of developing a form-based code that really presses the private sector to consolidate and eliminate driveways and shift access to side streets or the rear alley. And so that's specifically why this design is one that we feel is so appropriate. If you can just go to slide number 9, Margie. And what it does is it gets kind of the best of all possible worlds. And ultimately, when we have a redeveloped section here, the shared use path will be able to operate in an optimal format. But until we get there, the 5 foot bike lane provides that continuous access today. And then going forward, it creates a network through the center of the village that for through cyclists to use. So that bike lane, so the shared use path is going to become better over time. But we think this blended alternative, again, gets the best of all possible worlds. We all have narrow rights of way to deal with. So we have a 120 foot constraint. So with our 120 feet and our existing center median with a curb, we think this is the best allocation of space that can, again, improve over time as redevelopment happens and create a better experience.
All right, any other discussion? Any other committee members have their hands raised, Margie?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, let's move on to item 4A, summary points from the September 17th, 2020 governing board meeting. Information item only, no staff presentation unless a committee member, unless requested by a committee member.
I have John with his hand raised.
Okay.
Just one comment in your attendance and the votes for the various items. I see you had Commissioner Nearing from the city of West Palm Beach twice. I don't know if that was a mistake or if it should have been Commissioner Peduzzi if he was there. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. That was noted in the TAC as well for that correction. So I'll make sure that's updated on our website as well with the correct voting.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Any other hands raised on that?
I don't see any other hands raised, although no, I don't have any other hands.
Okay. Item 4B, FDOT project scheduling report. Information item only. No staff presentation unless requested by a committee member. Is there the committee members have any questions on the FDOT scheduling report?
I don't see any members with their hands raised, but I do have that my staff wants to make a comment.
You cut out, Margie. I couldn't hear you.
I just wanted to say thank you everyone for sticking with us today. I know it was a lot longer than everyone anticipated, and yeah, thank you for persevering through today with us.
Okay. Next meeting is December 3rd. No November meeting. At this time, the TPA intends to conduct their December advisory and board meetings in person. All right. Is that correct? Because that's still in person, but this may change if the governor extends permission to conduct virtual meetings. Thank you for your patience with us as we conducted the virtual committee meeting today. At this time, our committee meeting is adjourned. Hopefully I'll see everyone in person in December.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Halloween. Thank you all.
Happy days.